But what does that buy us?
I think we all
But we couldn't, we're not anymore.
should.
All right, so we do not have a quorum, so we are not gonna have an official meeting today. But since we have a presentation ready, we are gonna go ahead and hear from staff on that presentation. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to whichever staff is queued up to go. That would be the man on my right, your left. You're up. Mr.
James Orton Hess. So my name is James Orton Hess. I'm an analyst in the budget office, and I'm going to present the 2025 to 2029 capital improvement plan. But first, I just want to go over what a capital improvement plan, or CIP, is. So a capital improvement plan is a 5-year plan for capital spending. Like a budget, the CIP matches expected revenue with planned expenditures. But unlike the budget, the CIP has a multi-year timeline, which is helpful when planning large expenditures for projects that may span multiple years. Also, the difference between the CIP and the budget is that the CIP doesn't actually make appropriation authority. I'll go into that a little bit later. Preparation of the CIP is governed by Council Policy C9. That policy is up for revision from City Council. They'll be taking that up in July, and changes a few things that I'll also mention in a few slides here. In addition, LRS Chapter 223 requires that projects financed by SDCs or system development charges be part of an operative financial plan. And CIP meets that. So something that I think is pertinent to this commission is the ways that CIP projects are identified. They're identified in multiple ways, including via infrastructure assessments, planning processes, plan documents, and updates. For the urban renewal area, master plan updates, strategic action plans, and advisory board meetings provide guidance and direction for included projects. The city's various infrastructure plans, such as the TSP or Transportation System Plan, and the Comprehensive Parks Master Plan, are also important to the process and contribute to CIP. So the CIP is noticed to the public in several ways, and often projects that are included in the CIP are part of the public master or are part of the master plan process that includes outreach to neighborhood associations or advisory boards. The CIP webpage, pictured here, includes information about CIP development process as well as prior CIP documents. The webpage also includes a project request form that allows residents to submit projects to be considered in the CIP. These request forms are available year-round to be submitted. That same website also includes an interactive map where you can go, it has an overlay for boards, and you can go and click on the projects in that year's CIP, and it will show a little bit of detail as well as funding sources and things like that. Each year, a public hearing is held to receive feedback on the plan. That hearing was held in Budget Committee 2 weeks ago, but it will be going to Council for adoption. So really quick, I wanted to go over how the CIP relates to the budget. The CIP includes only projects with identified funding, so there are plenty of projects that are not in the CIP, and that will be the case until funding is identified. I mentioned Council Policy C9 earlier, which governs the CIP process, and that is up for consideration to raise that $50,000 limit to $100,000. That has been recommended by Finance Committee, and like I said, they will be taking in July. It also includes any projects where new funding is required. So there are projects that maybe have been approved in the past. The scope has expanded or costs have gone up. You might see that project into this year. So that first year of the CIP flows in to the budget along with carryover projects and mid-year adoptions. Sometimes City Council adopts projects mid-year that never had a chance to be in the CIP or an emerging initiative or something like that. That includes all the projects that don't meet that $50,000 limit, and it includes some administrative costs. So the CIP is made up of a bunch of project pages that look like this. So I just want to go through how to read those project pages. In the top left-hand corner, you'll see the project number. That's how we identify each individual project. Under that is the category that the project is in. Under that is the neighborhood association or neighborhood associations that the project takes place in. And under that is the type. Most CIP projects are scored, and if there's a score, you'll see it in the top right hand corner. But not all CIP projects are scored. Under that is the reward. And then the second half starts out with funding sources. Each column is its own fiscal year, and then it's totaled to the right. Then it's broken out by funding source. In this case, there's 2 funding sources. And under that is the current CIP total. Below that is the amount funded in prior years to get to the total estimate. And then at the very bottom, there's a brief description. So that is what the vast majority of the CIP is made up of. So before I got into this CIP, I did want to just acknowledge some of the city's accomplishments in 2024. In fiscal year 2024, 14 construction projects have been completed, and that includes the Civic Center Customer Service Center, which is downstairs, as well as the Union Street Bikeway project, as well as all the projects. Additionally, 9 projects will start this fiscal year. One of those projects is the Nixon Brown parking lots number 2 and 3, and then photo of the current state of it. And then there were 2 specific projects that we really wanted to call out in the CIP period. The first of which being the Bennett Dam Complex Improvement Projects. That project is displayed on page 86 of the CIP document. It's estimated to cost $35 million, $25 million of which is expected to be funded by a federal grant. The projects will replace the existing Upper Bennett Timber Crib Dam with an adjustable press dam, which will help secure long-term water supply from the city of Salem. And that project is in partnership with the Santana. The second project that we wanted to highlight is the Fisher Road Northeast Urban Upgrades Project. That project is displayed on page 62 of your CIP. It's anticipated to cost $18.8 million over a 5-year period. This will is mainly funded by the 2022 Safety and Livability Bond. The project is between Silverton Road on the east and the east-west curve, and includes new curves, sidewalks, bike lanes, stormwater treatment, and street lights. It also includes traffic signal replacement at Sunnyview Road Northeast and pedestrian crossings at Beverly Avenue Northeast and Devonshire Avenue Northeast. And full funding for this project is expected. So a brief overview of this specific CIP, $490.7 million over the 5-year period. That's 194 distinct projects, 26 funding sources, and 11 categories of infrastructure. On page 14 of the CIP document, there is this results area summary. We really break out our budgets by result area. As you can imagine, we have a safe, reliable, and efficient infrastructure result area, and the vast majority of CIP projects are in that category, but others are listed. This is a breakdown of CIP projects by funding source. The vast majority is 2022 safety and livability bond funds, as well as utility rates, followed by smaller portions for other things. That other category includes utility and transportation SDCs, donations, electric tax, streetlight rates, radio rates, things like that.
Can you explain to me what the basis for the NOAA contribution is?
That is that dam project.
So is that because of their fisheries relationship? That's the nexus.
This is the same graph basically just by project instead of by funding source. Largely matches the other one, utilities and transportation make up the vast majority, followed by a little bit more for or a little bit less for municipal facilities and municipal.
Hey, James.
Yes.
Before you go too far, can you go back one more slide? So under the all others, how much would you say of as a percent for CIP projects comes from the general fund?
Very little.
Very little. Very little. Okay. Thank you for that public notice.
Just to follow up, Josh Eggleston, Chief Financial Officer. I think year one is 843,000. We received that.
How are these scored? What does that mean?
Let me defer to Shannon.
10 stars. So projects are scored, not all projects are scored. And so when we first started scoring, we first started scoring utility projects and they're all scored with a specific criteria. Then a couple of years later, we added transportation with specific criteria, and then we added parks. This last year, we've been working on getting our criteria specific to the category. So water and sewer are pretty much the same, but stormwater is different because of regulatory requirements. So this next year, some of the criteria will change. You'll notice that some of the scores in the book, some are really high and some are really low. It doesn't really make sense. And because of the way it started out, parks projects have a top score of 100, a maximum score. Transportation's maximum score was 73, and utility scores was 125. It's just the way it worked out with the scores. So our new scoring with the criteria, we will be scoring on a maximum 100-point system. We won't be rescoring those in the CIP, the 500 to 600 unfunded projects will all be rescored. This round, all of the projects in the CIP currently were scored with the new equity tool. So those projects have a high score of equity of 25. If it was a citywide project, all citywide projects got an equity score of 12.5.
Almost done here. Just wanted to break out these groups a little more. So community facilities is $33.6 million. That's for historic structures projects and 43 parks projects. Municipal facilities is $85.2 million. That's 11 airport projects. And I want to note that the airport projects are up significantly due to additional federal grants for those projects. 13 living projects, 7 IT projects, and 10 infrastructure projects. Transportation is $180.2 million. That's just the one streetlights program, as well as 41 streets projects, and $191.7 million for utility projects, 15 stormwater, 28 wastewater, and 20.
It's the water project. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, go ahead. What was the question?
The water project, 21 projects, what are, could you just give me a category of what they are?
Commissioner Heller, could I ask you to speak into your microphone because I can't hear you?
Okay, I'd like to have a breakdown on the 21 water projects.
Good evening, Alan Dannon, city engineer. I can give you kind of a generic breakdown and then we can move to the specific, where you can get specific information about each project. But typically our water system, we're dealing with everything from the treatment plant at McCarran Island. And I think most folks know, just in case, we have a treatment plant on the North San Juan River, just outside the state, and that's where we collect water, treat it, and then it comes to town through transmission mains. So the dam project that was mentioned earlier, that's part of the water program. We also have projects to upgrade and seismically retrofit reservoirs in town that store water for different areas of Salem, so that we always have supply on hand, and those need seismic retrofits. So that's another project that you'll see in here. And then there's plenty of projects for upgrading existing city water lines. We have hundreds of miles of pipe, and lots of it is very old. So we try to replace those over time.
Thank you.
Okay, and so that concludes my presentation. Adoption of the CIP is going to be considered by City Council on June 24th. The commission may provide written testimony as a body to City Council before the meeting, or individual commissioners can also provide written testimony at the meeting itself. Staff to the questions.
Okay, so that's the full presentation. Okay. Let me start with the Planning Commission's interest here, which is the advancement of items that are critical to the comprehensive plan that we just updated. So I guess my first question would be, how do we ensure that some of the key, how do we ensure that there's alignment between kind of the priorities in the comprehensive plan and the CIP? And I'm thinking, for example, like CFAC. You know, as we want to move people to transit and to walk, bike, you know, how is that reflected in the capital improvement plan, for example, or the scoring system?
Yeah, I think the best way to answer that is essentially the comprehensive plan flows down, like the project you mentioned, to the transportation system plan. And that's what really informs the CIP development process. So as those master plans are completed, whether it's for transportation or other parts of our infrastructure, oftentimes we take the needs that are identified there and plug them right into the capital improvement program. And they become an unfunded project or an issue is what we call them. They get a score and then they start to work their way through the process. With transportation, it's a little bit different because there's limited funding that oftentimes is restricted for specific uses. I'm sure folks know this, but the city's transportation money that comes in is primarily from gas tax coming to us through the state. And by the time we take care of maintenance needs and the sort of daily operational needs, there's very little left over for capital transfer. So large transportation projects have to come from state, federal funding or grants. And that is oftentimes where those large initiatives that come from the transportation system plan or planning work with our Metro Transportation Planning Agency, SCATS, comes through that system. And so the ranking is less important than if there's money to fill that specific need. Did I answer your question?
It's getting there.
Okay.
So to what extent is the planning department involved in the scoring or decision-making process as it moves towards the city council?
I don't know, dude, I don't know, Lisa, if you all are involved in any of that scoring work so much. It's really more in that planning level work where we work on the master plans and develop projects that then go into the process. So one example of an effort that has turned into a project that's now in the CIP is the State Street planning study that happened, the long range planning study that happened there's an initial phase of that was funded as part of the 2022 safety and livability bond. And that is now in this document. Design work starts this year and next, I think. So that's the involvement that we have really with them is kind of at that master planning level. And then specific targeted issues that come in the way.
And I'll ask one more question and then kind of open up, maybe come back. So there's usually a temporal disconnect between the comprehensive plan, which we just completed a year or so ago, and then that flows down to the next set of plans. It sounds like that next set of plans, like the transportation master plan, is what you're looking at in the development of the CIP. So there could be changes that we've decided on in the comprehensive plan that are not yet reflected in the master plan, but that maybe still get funding, even though it may not be as relevant, because we're looking at the does that make sense? So I'm trying to figure out, we've got a big ship, and if we want to steer it this way, but half the ship is going that, I'm trying to forget the metaphor, but I think you know where we're going.
Yeah, I think I'm picking up what you're putting down, and you're right, it takes time, right, for those initiatives to work their way through it. The good news is the transportation system plan, we're just starting a revision to that, so I think that will sort of update a lot of those needs and how we're looking at our transportation system plan relative to things like transit and other modes that you mentioned. I had another brilliant thought that was going to tail that, but I lost track of it, so I'll just leave it there.
Can I help you with your question?
Sure.
I had a brilliant thought on your behalf. I was thinking maybe you could talk about how the bond committee is steering some of the projects, and I think I know like Silverton is just going to be paved, and I think through the bond committee there's discussion about it's going to get a road diet. So even though that wasn't necessarily in the TSP for that street to get a road diet, can be restriped. So could you talk to the kind of conversations that bond committee, how they're using those opportunities to achieve those goals in the interim?
Yeah, thanks for that, Lisa. So, that's a great point. We, with the bond program that I mentioned earlier, the city has $300 million in general obligation bond proceeds that was approved by the voters back in 2022. That'll be, that's programmed out over the next 10 years. And so with that with those projects, we have a council oversight committee that consists of the mayor, 2 councilors, and then 1 alternate councilor, and then a couple of citizen members. And we meet with them monthly to go over what's happening with the program and track progress. And one of the things that we talk about is exactly what Lisa said, is what opportunities to these projects that are now funded with a large amount of money do they give us? And the Silverton Road example is a good one. So with the transportation program, part of that program, we have 6 pavement R&R projects, that's rehabilitation and replacement. It's really are meant to just go out and do exactly that, fix pavement. But at Silverton Road, and folks that are familiar, it's the section from 17th stretching east from there towards the freeway. It's 2 travel lanes in each direction and, busy, congested and kind of tight feeling. And so, and no bike facilities to speak of. So what we're able to do is, because we're replacing the pavement, do some traffic analysis and see that we can do exactly what Lisa said. Go down to 1 travel lane in each direction with a center turn lane, and that leaves us room for bike lanes. And in some cases, we're working within the existing curb because we don't have the budget to move curbs around, but we can do bike lanes and in some cases even put strike buffers down. So that's what we're doing systematically through all those pavement projects that we've identified throughout town, is looking for those opportunities. As long as we're doing this work, we can start to bring some of those concepts in. So that's a good example of how these concepts filter down in advance of the master plan. So brilliant thought by Lisa.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna build on that, same sort of thought that Michael had just about in terms of the timing of the plans. I guess my question was about Fisher Road in much the same way, right? That we're putting, an $18 million plan in the CIP and, or a $18 million project in the CIP, and what plan does it tier to? Does it tier to a TSP from 20 years ago, or is it going to, by the time it gets built, tier to the one that gets passed hopefully in the next year or 2?
Yeah, we'll definitely be tracking what's happening and looking at that trend, and that's where that committee can help us, right? Because we don't have an adopted plan, but we've got counselors and other concerned folks that can help us sort of shape that and then take those decisions forward. If we need to deviate from the TSP, there's a process to do that, and so we can do that. But yeah, we don't want to do anything that's going to be outdated like years after it hits the page. I will say that Fisher Road is not fully funded in this program. It actually stretches out a couple more years beyond what's shown here. So the total cost is about 26 million. It's toward the end of it. So there's a good chance that we'll be pretty close, if not done. So we'll just try to match it as closely as we can as both projects go forward.
Others? Commissioner True?
I'm trying to.
Oh, just, all right.
Can't come up with
I'm
anything.
gonna talk to you, come up with something, just.
Yeah.
So is there an internal staff committee that shepherds this process through? And if so, I assume there is. If there isn't, there should be. Who's on it?
Yeah, you're kind of looking at the key players who really guide overall development, but then for each infrastructure category, there are sort of technical level experts that get involved and help with the scoring process. And those groups meet most of the year, so yeah.
Would ask more questions, but I don't think there's any value in that. Anything else that I guess?
No, this is the first time the CIP has come to the planning commission, but I can't remember, and I've been here for a long time. Because you talked about if there's plans to do this regularly, and if so, would it maybe come sooner in the year before it goes, has its public hearing?
Yeah, so we had a meeting, let's see, a couple months ago with the mayor and council president. We're actually reviewing CIP policy amendment. And there was a question raised at that group, it's like, well, why don't we go to the planning commission? It's like, well, just like you said, we've never done that before. There's no reason we shouldn't, no reason we couldn't. This year, I think we had a conflict in April, but the intent will be to go to the planning commission prior to the public hearing to help inform the process. Or like a preliminary CIP presentation, planning commission, public hearing, and budget committee, with adoption of city council. So at least that's the vision.
I think that's wonderful, and we certainly are not gonna turn down, I think, an opportunity to comment. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'm curious, Lisa, what you see the planning commission's role as, I mean, in terms of, you know, when we get together and hold public hearings as a quasi judicial body, well, that's not really connected to this. As a policy body, right, that makes recommendations to the city council, is that where it is? I'm trying to understand what the like tight connection is between the authority of the planning commission and the CIP.
Yeah, I don't know that you'll have authority over the CIP, but I think you can raise if you see a disconnect maybe between some planning goals that we have and projects that are in here. Or raise that, you know, hey, it says bike lanes here, we're talking about separated, have we designed that with, you know, and this is a goal in this area of town, we designated it's a climate friendly area, et cetera, so just to help staff as they're creating this document and thinking about these projects and how it's gonna further things.
That was a good question, Commissioner Tigan. The planning commission has an advisory role that's very, very broad and gives us the ability, if we choose to use it, to pick up almost anything related to the health and moral welfare of the city. So I'll leave that at that. But I do think that the capital improvement plan is maybe the clearest and most direct route to implement the vision of the comprehensive plan. It's about land use and what we buy and how we build things and what infrastructure what public infrastructure is getting paired with private market behavior. And that's really kind of, as I see it, that's our biggest tool to turn kind of broad policy language and map sort of language into reality on the ground. So I really appreciate you all coming in. I have looked through the capital improvement plan. I usually look at it for my neighborhood, even for me. I'll try to be a little broader next time I take a look at it. I know that we're particularly interested in green stormwater infrastructure. I know the city has a very good record on that. Maybe can we take 1 minute and if you can talk a little bit about that for us. I think if nothing else, we might be cheerleaders for it. And I'm certainly, maybe one of us can go, we can write something to the city council. I appreciated the response about kind of aligning the timing and how information, helping the staff process, we can keep the transportation plan concurrent thinking. I think that was very helpful. I appreciate hearing that. That was a very good, yeah, Silverton Road. But green infrastructure.
Sure, green stormwater infrastructure. It's been part of our practice for new development and new city projects for a while now. We're actually in the middle of implementing a revised NPDES permit, which is where those stormwater requirements come from. So those requirements are actually getting a little bit more stringent. Currently, the limit for development projects, and you folks probably know this, so I apologize if I'm saying things you already know, but the current limit for projects to implement green stormwater infrastructure is 10,000 square feet of new or replaced pavement or impervious surface, right? And that's gonna go down to 5,000 square feet with this new permit. So just about anything you do is gonna be required to be part of our work. And where that fits in is with the big bond projects, right? So that was back in 2008, we passed another streets and bridges bond. And that was when these requirements were just coming online. That was a big adjustment sort of midstream. Now the technologies are more mature, we've got a lot of experience implementing it, and so it's much smoother with the large urban upgrade projects to make sure green stormwater infrastructure is part of the plan, and it's pretty easy to, well, I don't say easy, but it's, it's a known pathway forward in how to do it. The other thing that's in the document is, there's money set aside sort of programmatically to do a couple of things. One is to retrofit old facilities that were first implemented when these green stormwater infrastructure regulations are coming online, and they changed a lot, and so especially related to flow control, the amount of flows that are released with certain storms has tightened up quite a bit, and so there's money set aside in here to go back and make strategic retrofits to old facilities that were kind of first generation. And then also some money set aside programmatically to help us address temperature TMDL requirements in our creeks. So providing shade, especially where we can strategically. So those are the things that you'll see in the document as well.
So I'm not gonna ask my follow-up questions, Alan, but maybe I can just grab you for a few minutes afterwards, so of course my colleagues still.
Doing great.
I'm not even gonna bang my gavel today, it's just